Do we have a quorum?
Yes.
Jackie, David, and Joe?
6, 8.
Alders.
Call the meeting to order. And Paul has information to share to get us started.
Sure. Welcome to our virtual meeting. We're going to cover a few basic items before beginning. 2 members and city staff, the chair, clerk, and technical facilitator, are responsible for muting and unmuting committee members. Use the raise hand feature when you'd like to speak or ask questions. Voting will be considered unanimous. Click raise hand to object or request a roll call. During any roll call, all panelists will be unmuted. Staff, click raise hand when you are asked a question. Chair will do their best to call on committee members in the order which hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link in your original email. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. The clerk will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the committee, please send it to the email listed on today's agenda. Thank you, Chair. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Being after 4:30, we'll call the meeting to order. Has this meeting been properly noticed and a quorum present?
Yes.
Thank you. We have some public hearings scheduled at 4:45. Does anyone want to make public comments on items not on the agenda, limited to 3 minutes? Seeing none. Are there any disclosures or recusals today? Always welcome to do that later if needed. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Alder Furman has his hand up.
Thank you. Okay. Alder Furman. Now I am going to...
There we go. I just want to request that you call the roll, please. That you take attendance.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Heidi, do you want to call the roll?
Thanks.
Sure. Alder Evers?
You're going to have to unmute everybody.
Is that something I do, Paul?
Yep, down at the bottom right, unmute all.
Right.
I'm here.
Alder Furman?
Present.
Dave Branson?
Here.
Joe Clausius?
Here.
Michael Cullen?
I am here.
Elise Adams? And Jackie Lutton.
Present. Okay. So everyone's here but Felice. Thank you for asking that. Okay. So we had no one for public comments. We had no disclosures or recusals. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting? Dave. Shoot, I did it wrong. Dave.
So moved.
Thank you. Joe.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor unless a raised hand appears? Seeing none, motion passes. Items 6, 7, and 19 have water resources reports, and those are all on the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Oops, whoops. Okay, David?
So moved.
Okay, I have to lower your hand, and then I'm going to go to Joe.
Okay, second.
Thank you, Joe. Assume approved unless I see additional raised hands. Seeing none, motion passes. item 5, 6, let's see, 5, sorry. Temporary. Okay, so 5 is for the public hearing. 6 is for public hearing. Gets us to item 7, also a public hearing. Okay.
Jackie, did we do the consent agenda? Sorry, it's Christy.
Yes, we did. There was no
Okay.
objection to anything on it.
Got it.
Okay, which takes
Staff,
us to
if you
item,
were, sorry, staff, if you were waiting on consent agenda approval, you can go ahead and leave the meeting. Sorry.
okay, thank you. Michael Cullen. Where, all right, I guess Michael Cullen raised his hand. Michael, unmute.
Hey, I had raised my hand. I had a comment on item number 20 on the consent agenda.
Okay. Can I go ahead and make your comment?
Or number 20?
Yes.
Yeah, it was
Should I
just
kick it off?
this is probably more for Christy than anything. Christy, if you could check sheet number W-6/9 on the plan set.
Yep. Let's see here. Okay, W6/9.
Yeah, it appears the keyed notes reference the wrong areas on the drawing. Specifically for numbers 7 through 13.
Don't see his name in the queue, but I can certainly send him an email and point that out to him.
Okay,
Thanks, Michael.
with the safer at home order, I've got a lot more time to look at things like that, unfortunately.
Oh, it's very helpful.
Okay. So we'll take that under advisement and continue on with the consent agenda approved with that exception. And that public hearing. What item are we on then? 12? 10. 10. Do we want to start on 10 or save that for later? Let's save that. That gets us to item 12. Town of Burke agreement. Okay. What do we have here? So we need Chris Potowski.
Staff, when you're called on, can you please click raise hand so it's easier to find you?
Yeah, sorry about that. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so this item number 12 is a intergovernmental agreement with the town of Burke for the maintenance of Anderson Road and related storm sewer facilities. If you guys might recall, last year we approved actually the Plan Commission approved a development on Manufacturers Road. As part of that development, Manufacturers Road would extend to Anderson Road, which is a town of Burke roadway. The Board of Public Works approved those improvements on Manufacturers Road, and then there was a few actually improvements in the town property as well. The town board has approved the work as well. And the final piece here is an intergovernmental agreement between the two municipalities for the joint maintenance of the street. Now that we have a few parcels on the street, and we also are contributing, this development is contributing an amount of traffic to the street. So we are going to be jointly maintaining the street. So this agreement was worked out with staff in town and both attorneys, and would allow us to maintain that road jointly until such time that it becomes completely a city street when the town dissolves in that area or annexes into the city.
Any discussion? Joe, let's see. Joe.
Oh,
Yep, go ahead, Joe.
okay. Just a point of order, I wanted to ask that dissolving the town of Burke on here, is there a definite terminal date for that, a timetable?
There is.
Because we keep annexing portions of this. I mean, is it all supposed to be done by a certain date?
Yeah, I believe it's. I can search that up real quick, but I believe it's like 2036 ish.
Okay, I was just curious. No big deal on it or anything.
Yeah, but there is a definite end date, and it's about. I want to say it's about 16 years away, and the reason I remember that is because the street is in very good shape, and generally the streets are designed for a 20-year design life. So the maintenance agreements likely wouldn't come into effect, hopefully, until it was pretty much our road anyways.
Mm-hmm. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Joe. I'm going to mute you and lower your hand. Well, I'm not going to do that. All right. Any other discussion? Okay, apparently not. Is there a motion to approve? Okay, I saw Joe move approval.
Yep.
Okay, do we have a second? I am not having very good pictures here. Okay, that was Dave with a second. All are in favor unless showing otherwise. And I'm not seeing otherwise. Motion passes. Let's see. Okay, that takes us to 6. Item 19. Alice Baum and Schaefer Water Main Project, Pete Holgram.
Yeah, am I unmuted?
Yes, you are now. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'm here to speak on behalf of this project. It's a water utility-led public works contract. It will be on the blocks of Alice Avenue between Schaefer Avenue, and as you can see on the exhibit there, and I'm just going to pull up my own since it's partially obscured, sorry. But yeah, we'll start at Turner Avenue and go to Schaefer Avenue with new transmission pipeline, and then up Schaefer Avenue to Buckeye Road, where we left off the limits on the Buckeye Road project. We'll also be making a second connection to our Unit Well 9, which kind of surrounds or is kind of in the center of this new pipeline work. And the purpose of it is to allow additional water flow and supply between our pressure zones. especially with well 15 out in zone 6 right now. This will allow us more, I guess, redundancy and supply capabilities sooner rather than later. I know there were some questions about holding off and doing some of this work alongside the Dean Avenue project. Most of that work doesn't overlap that contract anyways, but we have been urged to, I guess, move faster on this and try and get it done this year and get the pipeline capabilities set up here. I'll add that residents in the area will see a slight increase in pressure as they get moved over to a slightly higher pressure zone. This is one of the areas of lower pressure in the current zone that they're in. And, we expect to hopefully move pretty quickly on the project, 30 to 45 days, be in, be out, and patch the road. Sorry, we can talk about this one first, but I can answer questions about item 20 too. I wasn't able to get your attention when that was brought up earlier.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion? Okay, Michael. I don't know what I did, Michael. I think you should be able to speak.
Okay. What is the proposal? This is for item number 19.
Yeah.
What is the proposal for the street restoration? It's my understanding that a little less than half of the project is slated for complete street reconstruction next year in 2021.
So from, I believe it's
maybe. Go ahead.
The section on Alice Avenue, I believe, is going to see reconstruction in 2021. Everything virtually up Schaefer, I don't think much of that is included in that. So maybe about 30% of the project, I'd say, would be falling under the reconstruction limits.
Okay, so you got 30% of the project is slated for street reconstruction in 2021 and 70% will not be. Are there different proposals for what you're going to do as far as rehabbing the street at this time after the project is completed?
I'm not aware of different proposals. I guess our intent would be to stabilize it however deemed adequate, typically some kind of asphaltic patch until it's ready for full reconstruction. I guess that section of Alice, we wouldn't want to do any more than necessary. We're hoping to minimize any trench widths, obviously do as very little as possible. As far as service reconnections, we're on the correct side of the road that we wouldn't have to go across the street for anything. It's really just the goal is a very focused singular trench for our transmission pipe.
So are you going to have that defined before you go out to bid, I assume?
Absolutely, yeah.
But you don't know what you're going to do at this point?
As far as street restoration,
yeah.
At a maximum, it would be a trench patch type 3 that would be no wider than the width of the pipeline trench that we would dig.
But that'll be approximately half the street, won't it?
Well, for patch limits, I think on this grade of street, it would only be the size of the trench. I don't expect to rip up half the street to put in this pipeline. It would be exactly what they would need to get the trench in. That could be between.
To get a trench box in there, you're going to be ripping up half the street probably.
Well, and we're also on the I guess the north side of the street. So I'd have to look and see exactly where the edge of the pavement is too. But we might need to go halfway in.
My whole point to bringing this up is that I would hope that you had mentioned that nothing more than the minimum is going to be done because you're going to have to rip it up next year anyway for that 30% of the project. And then depending on when you're complete for the total project this year, as we found out last year, you run into issues the further into October you get, and you had a scheduler that included work into October. You always run the risk of getting into cold weather and not having enough time to get things all buttoned up. In some respects, it's better to let things sit over the winter anyway, because you're always going to get some settling. So I'm just wondering if it's ever considered not to do any pavement and just put stone in there and let things kind of settle over the winter.
I would certainly, if that was advisable, I would accept that solution. I mean, I am in agreement that we don't want to do any more than necessary to leave an acceptable street until the next project starts. I do know that section of Alice Avenue is around a 5 to 6% slope. So that might affect something like, I'm not sure that a gravel patch would ever be accepted. I might ask one of the streets engineers to weigh in on that, but something like a cold patch, maybe not something as comprehensive as a full type 3 trench patch might be allowed. But we would do whatever was, I guess, the minimal acceptable restoration for both safety and the street's integrity between now and the next project. But no, we don't want to overdo it. Absolutely not.
All right, that's just wanted to check to make sure you're considering all those options anyway.
I've had signals of 2 people are raising their hands, and I don't see where I'm going to connect with them. So
Bob has
I can just, Jackie, this is Rob. I
Thank
can
you.
speak here. We wouldn't put a gravel patch in on the road over the winter. We would just minimize the depth of asphalt to minimize cost for a street that we were planning to reconstruct in the very near future. So something like 2 inches of asphalt is what we would do. Just kind of a bare bone minimum pavement thickness. It's probably what we'd do if we're going to reconstruct the street.
Are there any other comments? Is there a motion to approve item 19? All right, what have I got here? Oh, here we go, David. Unmute, David. Thank you, David. And I have someone with a second. Someone with a second? Oh, there you are, Joe. Okay, here we go. I lost Joe. All right. Joe wants to make the second, but I've lost him.
His hand is raised, so he should be up at the top of your list on the participants panel on your right. Since we went back to full screen, you're going to want to click exit full screen up at the top right to see that panelist list again.
Exit full screen. Top right. It's kind of bad.
Are you unable to see the participants list right now?
I see a participants list. I see 3 participants with raised hands as a label, but I don't see their raised hands.
It's just a little blue raised hand icon. So right now, Alder Evers and Joe Clausius have their hands up.
I don't know why they didn't come to the top of my list here.
Not sure they should.
Huh. All right, I'm going to click on the 2 panelists with raised hands, it says here.
I'm not
I'm not
muted right now, so
Thank you. Go ahead. Did you
So
make your
moved.
second?
Second. Okay.
Heidi, do you have that?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any objection by raising a hand? I'm going to put Joe's back down. Mute, then lower the hand. What a mess. All right, motion passes. Okay, now it's time for public hearing, which is item 5 with Kyle Frank on place lining noise impact one. Okay. Kyle Frank.
Hi, I'm Kyle Frank. I'm with City Mass Engineering. So this is for noise variance for a lining project over on the north side.
Kyle, people can't hear you.
Anything? Heidi said you could not hear me. Can others not hear me?
Yeah, you're really soft.
I'll try and speak up louder then. Is that better at all?
Yeah, that's a little bit better.
All right, so this is for a lining project and some night work night work variance that they are requesting. Essentially, what's going on is they need to use a different technique than they typically would because of the size of the pipe. And what that technique uses is hot water, and the process for bringing that water up to temperature takes longer than steam. And they didn't feel they could fit it in to the standard 12-hour workday that we allow, which is from 7 to 7. It sounds like it's actually going to take them about 15 hours to complete this work. So they're requesting to be able to work outside of those standard hours. Like I said, they think it'll take right around 15 hours total, which would put them being done at about 10 p.m. At night. So it wouldn't be a full night of trucks out there. It would just be roughly right around 3 to 4 hours would be my guess.
Okay. Are there other questions? Oh, I have to open the public hearing. Seeing no registrants, as previously they would have had to have registered. I'm going to close the public hearing. Is there a motion to approve? Okay. David, thank you. Mute, lower hand. And a second, Joe.
Okay. Yep. Second.
Second for Joe. Mute, lower hand. All in favor by acclamation? Seeing no opposition, motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you.
2 page. Three, we're on. We're on item 10?
6.
2 more public hearings, Jackie.
Yeah, where'd those go?
Oh, sorry. So now we're on item number 6.
Okay. So this is also Kyle.
Correct.
Yes. Okay, Kyle. And we have a registrant when we get to that point, who opposes but wishes to speak. Okay.
All right. So this is a basically it's essentially a sanitary sewer replacement out on East Gorham Street from North Butler down to North Livingston. Through our annual CCTV maintenance program, our operations crew identified this stretch of sanitary sewer as being in very poor condition. And it makes sense. The sewer is very old. It's from 1906 and 1928. So it's coming up on at the end of its service life. And essentially what we found is basically every single segment out here had some form of cracks, fragments, breaks, sags, holes, you name it. It had it out here. So it was identified as being a priority for replacement. And so that is what we are proposing with this project, is a full replacement of the sanitary sewer and the laterals themselves. And then we would patch the street and repair any curb and gutter and sidewalk and drive aprons that were disturbed with that work. It is an assessable project. The assessments would follow the city policy where the city would cover 100% of the sewer main cost. The laterals would be a cost share where the homeowner would be responsible for 25% of the cost and the city would cover 75%. And then all the concrete work would be a 50-50 split between the homeowner and the city. There is no water main work proposed with the project, and we just have some very, very minor storm sewer upgrades. So in general, this is basically a 100% a sanitary sewer replacement project. There has been some feedback from both the public informational meeting and through emails. One of them was for undergrounding and to install some conduit for undergrounding with this project. We looked at it and basically this project would not qualify under the city policy for any sort of undergrounding or including conduits. Because it's a utility project only, we won't be reconstructing the whole street. We'll just be trenching in where we need to replace the sanitary sewer and the laterals and then patching it in. And those trenches will only be roughly 10 feet wide where they'll be installing the utilities themselves. I don't think too much more other than the estimated cost for this. Right now, the estimated cost is $1,260,000, and $177,000 of that would be accessible. So with that, I'll open up to any questions.
Great. Okay, hang on. We've got a question here. Michael? Okay, yeah, Michael.
What's the age of the water main at that stretch there?
Stretch it's very old. It's actually it's cast iron from 1882. Yep, that's the correct. On your face there, that is the age of it.
Doesn't it kind of make sense to maybe consider replacing that?
It would. We reached out and the water utility felt that it was in a condition where they did not want to replace it. So.
It just doesn't make sense to me anyway. If you've got something that's that old and you're talking about excavating where you got the opportunity to do that.
Could I interject here?
Yes, please.
You're correct in that ideally we would replace this water main. There are hundreds of miles of water main that I'm sure the water utility would like to replace if they could. And I certainly would have liked them to be able to replace this one, but their budget is in a situation where they have to prioritize which mains get replaced and which ones don't. And we talked about this in the board at the board meetings in the past. The post World War II mains are the mains that are most susceptible to breakage. And the water utility has a very good database that they keep track of this and a good system for prioritizing their main replacement. And this one doesn't rise to replacement because its break history is better than the mains they're replacing. Again, ideally, yes, of course we'd replace it. But we have to be respectful of the fact that the water utility has budget concerns and issues that they have to address, and their ability to replace all the mains that they'd like is just doesn't exist today.
Okay, thank you. Is there, Michael, did you have more?
No.
Okay. And Rob, that was, okay. With that, I will open the public hearing. We have Matt Frost as a registrant, opposes, wishes to speak. Matt?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Thanks for listening. I just wanted to thank you for listening. Because of Safer at Home, my wife is forced to work at home along with me. She's on the management team at Delve, and like this body, conducts meetings on Zoom all day long. The road work is extremely noisy, dusty, and shakes your house all day. I've lived a summer of this on Rutledge Street before buying this house. This work will be happening literally feet from where she has to conduct these meetings. Our feet is just feet from the street. This procedure also kicks up an incredible amount of dust, which COVID can attach itself and float right into our homes. Add to that heavy breathing road workers and we're exposed. Like the city, we've been facing a budget crisis as my business in the film industry was flattened by the pandemic. I had until recently been surviving on an SBA loan. I know this is true of other people on my street. If this happens, we'll absolutely need to sell our house immediately. With the 6-week window ahead of us, that is obviously incredibly stressful and difficult, but this construction will make it impossible for us to conduct business from this location, and it will make it impossible for us to socially distance from your workers. We're trying to socially distance, and the city wants to put COVID right on our doorstep. It took us completely by surprise that the city would proceed with this work given the current situation. We implore the city to postpone this project until there is a vaccine for COVID. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I'm closing the public hearing. Are there comments? Rob or Kyle?
Yeah, I appreciate the gentleman's comments, and it is an extraordinary time and a very difficult time. We have a sewer that needs to be replaced, so people might, could be impacted by lack of action here. We are trying to get this done when traffic is light. So this year provides an ideal opportunity to do the project. In fact, accelerated the entire process, which was delayed a bit because of the COVID crisis that we're in. So we've sped this up. It's the plans have actually been bid. We discussed this with the Alder. We can issue an addendum if something is to change at this meeting or at the council. But I want to be upfront about that we did something extraordinary here to speed this project back up, to get it back on schedule again, to take advantage of the reduced traffic on the road. I was going to say one other thing. We are proceeding with construction throughout the city, and one of the primary reasons for that is that this is an extended event, and construction workers are another sector of society that we're trying to reduce the impact on. So they're needing to work too, and this project no doubt will employ several workers. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Alder Heck, I believe you had your hand up and I don't see it yet, but would you like to speak?
Sure, thank you. I just have a question for Rob or Christy or whoever might be able to answer this. I understand that engineering has some precautions that contractors must agree to in order to do street construction during the pandemic and the various levels of safer of home that we might experience. Can Can you describe what those are?
Sure. There's a whole list of them. I'm not going to go through all of them, but they have to do health and wellness checks, sanitation, as far as providing employees with the ability to sanitize their hands and such. It includes taking the temperature of employees when they arrive to work, that type of thing.
And for potentially asymptomatic construction workers, do they need to observe physical distancing or face masks or anything like that?
Yeah. To the extent possible, they're to observe social distancing. Face masks are not a requirement.
Thank you.
Alder Evers?
Thank you, Chair. Why can't we require face masks for these workers? This issue came up on the Gregory Street reconstruction. Individuals are not socially distancing when they're working in this close quarters. If they are working around dust, it seems like having some kind of an N95 mask on would be appropriate, and it would allay some of the concerns that residents have. It's hard for me to see why we're not requiring this. It's strongly suggested, for example, when restaurants open back up, that food workers, people who are preparing food, be wearing face coverings. City workers are wearing face coverings when they're out dealing with the public. It seems like it's not a whole lot to ask, Rob. Why can't we ask these firms to require their employees to wear a face covering?
Well, as you can imagine, we discussed internally many issues associated with bringing contractors back to work, and face masks was one of them. And the reason, Alder, is that doing physical labor and sweating and constantly adjusting your mask might actually be harmful to them. That was the reason. I think people could probably debate both sides of that, but that was the thinking. We're certainly willing to discuss that more with both our contractors and labor.
Alder Heck?
Thanks. Rob, could you also talk about the requirements for dust suppression? You don't have to go into great detail, but vaguely, what's an overview of that?
Well, where dust becomes a big issue is where you've got traffic running over gravel streets, which you won't have here. Not in a big way. So what you're going to have is some dust associated with excavation. There really isn't a lot that can be done in regards to that. Where you've got dust that's occurring because of just traffic running over unpaved areas, that we are typically addressing that through wetting the pavement periodically. But again, I don't know that we would have that situation here. I'm not going to be so foolish as to say there isn't going to be any dust, but I think in this situation, it's a little less than even a local residential street that's getting reconstructed and doesn't have a pavement on it, and people are running back and forth, residents and whatnot on that. If the part of the street that is not being driven on is a problem, it could certainly be wetted down if that became a problem during construction. Again, construction is messy. I'm not going to say that it isn't.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I believe I have closed the public hearing. If not, we'll do so now. Is there a motion or further discussion? Is there a motion to approve? David? Thank you. In a second. Alder Furman?
Second.
Thank you. Further discussion? Alder Heck, did you have anything more? Or?
Yes, I'd like to ask another question that wasn't related to the public comment. There was a written public comment that came in concerning a hope that putting conduits in for future undergrounding of utilities could occur with this project. And from what I understand, there is a policy related to whether or not particular projects qualify for that. So I'm wondering if staff can just kind of give a brief overview of why this project seems not to qualify for undergrounding.
Alder Heck, it's Christy here. We did exchange a couple emails regarding this topic. We do have an undergrounding policy in place that tries to help direct staff, where to budget and where to put the time into getting estimates for undergrounding. This project is a resurfacing project rather than a total reconstruction. So the excavation of the trench will be specifically for the sanitary sewer. So that will be a limited width, enough to get the work done. So most of the road bed will remain in place and undisturbed. So again, not providing that opportunity of taking advantage of everything being dug out. I will also mention I did forward the correspondence that came in from one of the property owners, hoping that we could add conduit to our public works contract that is currently out to bid. And just to clarify, any type of undergrounding is done by the private utility. So, the city would not spec and install and inspect any type of private utility. MG&E would take the lead and work with the other underground needs in the area. So hopefully that answers your question.
Well, I guess maybe I'm looking at the policy and I'm wondering if you can point me to the portion of the policy that where it says you can't do extra work if the whole street isn't being reconstructed, etc.
I think if you look, let's see here. Well, actually, so if you look at the second page of that policy, under number 1, which is collector or arterial, which would be this corridor. So number 2, the project is part of a street reconstruction project, or conduit has been installed as part of a previous project. So this is not and might be splitting hairs here. Of when I say a street reconstruction, what somebody else may think of that, but our street reconstruction projects are where we completely remove all of the gravel, the pavement, the curb and gutter, and just gut the whole thing out. This project here, most of the pavements is going to remain in place, and the gravel below that. And the only gutted out part or complete excavation is going to happen for just the sanitary sewer. So on a reconstruct, you usually will see water mains, storm sewer, sanitary sewer. And again, the contractor will excavate that whole width of the street, down, 1-2 feet at a minimum.
If I could just add, please. I don't think people should have an expectation that residential streets are going to be underground. That has only happened in TIF districts. Do we have a TIF district here, Christy?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so. And I think this is primarily a residential area of the street as well. So I really don't see much expectation here that the street is going to get undergrounded. The city's budget is just not in a position to do that. And we can't just underground people's streets and we have to treat everybody fairly. So if we want to start undergrounding, it's we have to apply that citywide, and there's just no expectation, at least on my part, that those projects, undergrounding projects, can be funded to do that.
Well, I guess I'd say I don't know if the half-mile rule would apply to get to TID 36, I guess, from here. Perhaps not, I'm not sure. But I understand your point about the budget in general. This is kind of a unique location because a great deal of it is, on one side is James Madison Park property. And I know there's a lot of concern about trying to maintain and grow our urban tree canopy, and undergrounding in the part, the right of way that's adjacent to the park seems like it would accomplish several city goals, at least on that side of the street. But I understand the budget constraints. We all know we're going to have a very tough time in the future, but it is an opportunity to do it. But I understand it if in terms of the actual construction. So in order to install conduits, when you're, let's say, only digging deep, let's say in a relatively small section of each property, you're saying you would actually need to dig up the entire run, and you can't somehow get conduit between the sections that are dug up without doing that. Is that right, Christy?
First, what they would typically do is they would have to find a corridor to run the length of the street, and there's actually quite a few utilities already in this corridor. So again, they would have to have a corridor where they would lay conduit the whole length of the street, and it would be conduit for MG&E and then the other fiber and telephone companies. Usually, that is usually about 2 to 3 different companies that will also be on the poles of MG&E. And I did look at the poles, and I can tell there's telecommunications on there. So that would be the first step, is to find that corridor where they would, run their main line the length of the street. And then they have to have cutovers that go towards the property owners, not every single property owner, but, to install their pedestals to further distribute the cable and the electric. It's quite an involved design in order to try to figure out, where those things would go. And I did include that information because we did do this on a portion of Williamson Street, and did conduit only. No wires came down, and I applied that cost to this corridor, and the cost for the conduit alone would be over $300,000. So, it's very expensive even trying to plan for the future. And so that has to be budgeted, thought out well. And we don't have those funds budgeted at this point. So, it's just not a matter of and putting it.
If I could just add to that, this is a resurfacing project. Resurfacing projects have a limited life. So you're probably talking 15 years or so before it's resurfaced again. I don't think there's any way that MG&E could design this project to meet our schedule this year. It is going to get resurfaced next year. I don't know if we mentioned that, but
yeah,
share of the sewer this year and next year it would be resurfaced. So I suppose if there is an interest, it could still be done next year. Alder Heck brought up a good point that we didn't anticipate really in the policy, and that's the desire to underground near parks. That wasn't specifically written in the policy, but it's an interesting thought that certainly could be considered in the future. But again, resurfacing is not a long life, so will be other resurfacing projects in the future if the city's financial position changes. And again, and we have this opportunity next year, I suppose, if somebody could, if we could figure out how to accomplish that, say in front of the park.
And I'd like to point out, this is Christy again, that the lines are, for the most part of the park, there are no overhead lines on the park side. They're on the opposite side. So
good point.
The park is pretty opened up. Nice trees. And
would if there was a corridor, I think you called it, is that usually in the street or in the right of way, or?
Well, yeah, so the right of way would include the street and the sidewalk and the terraces. And I quickly looked at the plans. There's fiber optics underneath the sidewalks. Of course, you got the sanitary storm, but it looked like there may be a possible corridor within the street. But it was pretty packed full with different utilities.
And if we want to revisit this possibility next year when the resurfacing occurs, that's just resurfacing, though. It's not digging up any of the utility, the storm sewer will not, and the water line won't be replaced, as you've discussed. Would there really be a possibility of doing something next year, maybe when the city's financial position is at least a little more known? Don't know if it'll be any better. But
I think what Rob was trying to say is the park was something special. Maybe we could look into it. But at least what I saw, most of the lines were on the other side of the street.
Okay.
And, it wouldn't qualify for several reasons. Once it's just a plain resurfacing, because of that whole issue of, you'd have to be out into the road and have a trench and the cost, and it's not in a TIF district.
And it's commercial. It's not primarily a commercial street.
Correct.
And Christy, is your rough estimate that you got from looking at the Willie Street costs, did that include doing extra excavation and then replacing that and replacing more asphalt because of the need to dig between the sewer laterals, essentially, or where if needed?
I'm sure it had some cost in there, but all of the pavement did come up on Williamson Street. And part of it was a resurfacing. So I'm sure that it did include some of those costs that we weren't doing a full excavate.
Okay, I appreciate it. I just kind of wanted to make sure that was all on the table. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. With that, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Any objections? Seeing none, motion passes. Thank you. We're on to item 7 with Andy Zweig, Dairy Drive Assessment District.
And just so you know, Madam Chair, there was a registrant for that came in after I sent you that PDF. So
okay, thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Andy Zweig. I'm with engineering. I'm here to talk to you about approving the second revised assessments for Dairy Drive. We decided to revise them a second time to add clarity of what the city costs for the assessments are. We have a stormwater utility parcel, which was previously listed on the assessments. We have another parcel, which is city engineering, that wasn't listed on the either last version of the assessments, but was still being utilized for the calculations. It just wasn't shown. And we also have some DOT right-of-way frontage, which doesn't have any parcel number associated with it. So it wasn't shown on the assessments, but again, it was factored into the calculation. This second revised assessment just shows those two parcels of frontages to show that they are being calculated with the assessments. And also we received the bids for the project. So we just recalculated the costs based on the bid prices. So that is why we did the second revised assessments for Dairy Drive. And Dairy Drive is currently in construction.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll open up the public hearing. We have one registrant. Paul?
Yeah, the registrant, his name is Tyler Marks. In support, does not wish to speak, but is available to answer questions, and he is in the attendee list, so he is here.
Okay. Are there any questions for Tyler? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Thank you for coming out, Tyler. Is there further discussion? Alder Evers, excuse me.
Yeah, I was just going to make a motion to approve. Sorry.
Thank you. And a second. David?
Second.
Second. Motion is approved unless I see an objection. Seeing none, motion passes. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Yep, exactly. We're on item 10, repealing and recreating Chapter 37, the Public Stormwater System, Erosion Control. We have a registrant and two registrants. One does not wish to speak.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen.
Who's speaking?
This is Janet Schmidt.
Oh, Janet. Okay, gotcha.
Hold on. Hold on, I'm just having a couple, I need to close something out here. Okay, hopefully you can see that. All right, so Greg Fries and I are going to be presenting about the proposed MGO Chapter 37 revisions. I'll do the first part and then Greg will do the second part. So as a brief overview of this, we're going to talk about the flooding that occurred in August of 2018, climate change, what does the future hold for us, and changing rainfall patterns. I'll go over the ordinance revisions that are being proposed compared to what exists now. And then Greg will talk about the comments and our responses that we received. All right, I know a lot of you have probably seen this already, but so I'll try to make it brief. This image is a graphic that we got from Professor Dan Wright down on campus. We've been working with him quite a bit over the last 2 years with regards to the flooding. So this just shows the rain event, the historical rain event that happened in August of 2018. So as you can see in the map, there's quite a bit of flooding that occurred on the west side, and then it kind of tapered off on the east side. If you look at the index, there's the red indicates 12 to 15 inches of flooding, 9 to 12 is orange, 6 to 9 is yellow, and so forth. So this is a graph that we use a lot. It's the NOAA Atlas 14 intensity duration frequency curve for recurrence intervals. And just quickly, I'll be talking about this in a little bit and how it all ties together. So on the vertical axis, you can see that there's duration, which is time, and it goes from 5 minutes down to 24 hours. And then on the horizontal, it's the average recurrence intervals in years. So it's a 1, 2, 5, 10, etc. year events. So this map indicates the bold bold numbers are the inches over a certain time. And if you look down in the yellow box, you can see a 100-year event at 24 hours is 6.76 inches. The rainfall that we got in August of 2018 was more in the line of between, in certain areas, 12 to 15 inches of rain. And if you can look on this graph, 7 to 9 inches of rain over a 6 to 12 hour time frame. That's a 1,000-year storm event. So that's pretty unprecedented for anybody. So if you take the tabular data, again, this is the NOAA Atlas 14 in the inset, and you actually graph this out. That's what this graph is, and the blue line indicates the Atlas 14 information. So if you look at the vertical axis, that's rainfall in inches, and the horizontal is the recurrence interval, and the bottom line of that indicates the year event that it is. So that's the blue line. The orange line is Professor Dan Wright. He actually took this information and he made it more specific for the Madison area. So what he did is he took the Atlas 14 information and he added in the missing years that were the 14 data ended and the new to the current time frame. So that made a different type of curve for the Madison area. As you can see, it's higher in rainfall than the design standard of the NOAA 14 that we're using. And then interestingly enough, the red line is actual rainfall data we got from the Charmony Farms rain gauge over in the UW Research Park on the west side. So that's 60 years worth of data, and that's even higher than what Professor Wright's information shows, but and significantly higher than our design information that we use for sizing our pipes. So what does this all mean? So I wanted to point out the green arrows on this graph, again, show a 100-year event if you look on the bottom. And then if you follow that line up to the blue line where it intersects, that's about a 6.6 inches of rain for the Madison area in a 24-hour storm. If you keep going up to the orange line, and again, that's Professor Wright's rainy day information, that intersects at about 7.99 inches for the same 100-year storm. So that's pretty significant, actually. And how this relates to what I'm getting at, if you look at the purple arrows down at the bottom, it's pointing to the 200-year. If you follow that up to the blue, it almost intersects the NOAA Atlas 14 at about the same location as if the 100-year for the Professor Wright rainy day intensity duration curve. So what this is telling us is that the Madison area more realistically has for a 200-year event using the NOAA Atlas 14, it's very similar to a 100-year using the rainfall data that Professor Wright had provided. So why does that matter to us? So this is what we're proposing for our ordinance revisions. Now, our ordinance, we have this broken down between new development and redevelopment. And then each of those components has two sections, the quality and then the quantity. So for new development, the quality component, we're not changing at all. You can see that there's columns for the description and then the existing requirements and the proposed changes, and there's no changes for the quality. Now for the quantity, as I was getting to before, we're changing the detention to include the 200-year detention. So all the changes that we're proposing are actually shown in red. So in the 200-year, as you remember from the chart, is very similar to the Professor Wright's rainy day software projection for what a 100-year in the Madison area would actually probably look like today. So for storm pipes, the design standard was 10 years. We're keeping that the same. For culverts, where we have roadway crossings of our greenways, we had a lot of washouts of those. So we're upping that from before they were about 25 or 50-year designs. Now we're changing that to 100-year. For enclosed depressions, it was 25-year. We're changing that to 100-year. And an enclosed depression is an area we have a lot of neighborhoods and roads that have these where the water cannot actually drain out of the system except for through a pipe or a pump. So if it's enclosed, we're changing that so that they're designed to handle a 100-year event. Detention basins, again, are 200-year. Grandfathering of old detention requirements. So we have some old developments around town that we had in practice before the rain events in August of 2018. Grandfathered those old requirements. So they might have had a detention requirement for a 10-year detention. And then since that time that development had started, the detention requirement had changed to 100-year. In past practice, we used to grandfather in the 10-year. Now we're not allowing that anymore. So they're going to have to meet the current standards for that. So roadways are expected to be used as an overflow. So when the road starts flooding, that's intentional in many cases. So before, we'd never modeled that for new developments. So again, new development being like a new subdivision, maybe on the periphery of town. Those events are going to actually be modeled using better software. We had never done that before, and now we're going to do that. And I'm going to skip one and go down to the 100 and 500-year routing. That holds true for that. So what we're going to do is we're going to use better software to route these events and to look closer at how these larger events actually flow through the development. So for 100 years, we're going to make sure that the water doesn't leave the roadway or public lands. So that could be a roadway, a park, easement, something like that. For 500-year, we're saying that it can actually leave the public lands, but it's not going to be allowed to flood any structures. So if there's a house or a building, underground parking, we're going to look at that and make sure that those structures are held above that elevation so that they won't be flooded. And in order to do that, we're going to do deed restrictions on those properties. Going back to the overflow and access, as part of the platting requirements, there might be developments where there's a pond, and then there might be houses lined along those pond. A lot of times we use easements to allow safe overflow between houses to allow it to go to the pond. In the past, we've allowed those to be outlots. That's become problematic because outlots, we've allowed them to be easements. And that's been problematic because easements, people can use those easements and they tend to do this. They'll plant them, maybe put in a fence, but importantly, they're also allowed to put a building right up to the edge of the easement. Requiring them to be outlots is different. We would probably put an access path or something there to define where the city property is. We would maintain it so it's clear that they can't encroach. And then importantly, there's setback requirements on outlots where they wouldn't be able to build right up to that line. Okay, so the second component is for redevelopment. And again, there's two categories for the redevelopment. There's quality and quantity. And again, the quality aspect is not being proposed to change. But I do want to point out the sentence at the bottom, which is important, because if a redevelopment has proposed impervious area that exceeds 80% of the existing site area, then they have to meet the peak runoff and peak volume controls with green infrastructure. So what that means, if there's like a 10,000 square foot lot that's being redeveloped, my favorite example is the Galaxy, which was the old Don Miller property, fully paved, had a building on. If they were able to take that down to 80% of the impervious and have 20% being either grass or something like that that's pervious, then they would be out of this requirement. If they're not able to do that, then the items in red, especially the peak runoff and the runoff volume control, would kick in. So for peak runoff, they'd have to reduce down 15% for a 10-year design storm. For runoff volume, they'd have to reduce down by 5% compared to the 10-year. And then importantly, the infrastructure would have to green infrastructure would have to be used to reach these goals for the first half inch of rain. So that's kind of important. In practice, we had originally, a couple of years ago, been requiring all buildings on the isthmus to hold to a minimum of elevation of 851. Based on how we know the system worked back in 2018, 2019, we decided to make that minimum elevation 852 just to provide extra level of comfort. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Greg.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now. Yes?
Good.
Okay, so I'm going to try and go over quickly. We've been doing public information meetings on this for a long time now, probably close to a year. And we have received a number of comments. And I'm just going to, there's a lot of pages of these. I'll hit the high points here. So one is, what's going to happen for Madison Area Business Association, Madison Area Business Association, Builders Association, is what's going to happen when NOAA reissues Atlas 14. So the last time up until Atlas 14 was issued, it was issued in 1968 or 69. So this is not something they do very often. I have not heard any rumblings that they are going to do this again. More likely what is going to happen is there's going to be a individual Wisconsin intensity duration frequency curve created by the Wisconsin Initiative on Climate Change Impacts, or WICI, that Madison is a part of. When that IDF curve is created for the entire state, it is very likely we will then open up this ordinance and adopt that. But that is a 3 to 5 year time frame. So we are not looking to wait until that is done. Next slide, please, Janet. We also had a request from the Builders Association to delay implementation of this for 18 months. We have proposed not to do that. This project has been ongoing for at least 18 months, and we have been trying to be very transparent with anybody who comes in, reaching out to them and letting them know this is in the works. So this has not been a secret. We've also declined a request to cap the detention requirements at 200 year by the MABA. They had requested that we cap those requirements and not allow future councils to amend them as needed. I don't think that's actually technically legal. Doran, I don't think, would allow me to bind future councils with this council's action. So we did not do that. Next slide. And then we have a number of what I would call administrative corrections. Our ordinance is subservient to the counties and to DNRs. We can be more stringent, but we have to be at least as stringent. And we had some definitional issues we had to correct. League of Women Voters requested we talk about how we were going to update this standard for future rain, which I've already addressed. We are doing that. Next slide. We also had, this is a kind of a substantive one. Hamburg Contractors requested a change to how we define redevelopment. So currently redevelopment is defined as a disturbance of 4,000 square feet. So that's pretty small. It's about 1/10 of an acre, okay? And that has some unintended consequences. So if you happen to own an 8-car parking lot for a small business and your parking lot needs to be redone, if you come in, what's going to happen is we're going to say, well, you're disturbing 4,000 square feet, so you got to put in all these stormwater requirements for water quality treatment. And on a per parking stall basis, that is extraordinarily expensive. We've met with Dane County. They are also, at least they were pre-COVID, working on updating their ordinance. They are going to jump that redevelopment criteria up to 20,000 square feet, or essentially half an acre. We weren't comfortable with doing that. We thought there was some middle ground. We do a lot more redevelopment than Dane County does. So we are proposing to change that to 10,000 square feet, or basically 1/4 of an acre. So you could redo your parking lot at up to 10,000 square feet and not have to meet what is primarily a water quality goal, but a very expensive one to meet. We also had some definitional things on when that 100 and 500 year that Janet talked about were going to be implemented for the overflows. So we made some corrections there. Next slide. Again, some updates to code to make sure we are on the same page with Dane County and DNR. Just definitional changes. Next slide. This one is substantive. So Viridian has a comment here. They tend to plat very large pieces of property. And when they do that, if the market changes going forward, right, what our code would say is that if you come in and replat, like let's just say, for example, due to this COVID, there's a change in market for now there's more people want carriage homes than standalone single families. And because that hits a different price point. So Viridian wants to replat part of a plat that they have already recorded. The replatting process would normally trigger them to meet the most current standard, okay? And so, but normally, like, and this could be, so Grandview Commons, for example, on the east side, that plat has been going on for something in the neighborhood of 15 years, okay? So if they did a new plat and I suddenly said to them, well, now for the new plat, you have to meet a 200-year detention, the detention basins for that plat have been built for 15 years. They don't have the ability to go back and expand that. That land is already sunk, as it were. So what we came to as a compromise here was saying that if you replat within 7 years of the adoption date of this ordinance, you wouldn't have to meet for detention. You wouldn't have to meet the new 200-year detention. You would have to meet the standard that was in place, and this is only for residential, something that wouldn't fall underneath its own requirement, because individual residential lots are too small to meet this code. So what happens here is you could have to meet the code you had to meet when your residential plat was developed. But if you change your impervious level, like let's say you go from 75% impervious to 85% impervious, you do have to make up that volume. So you still have to meet the standard you met for what you are proposing to use and proposing to do. And since that could have been, could require more volume and you can't get it downhill, that could require distributed practices in the new replat. But it would only require it for what you're changing your use to. And so what that basically means is they would continue to meet the 100-year, but they would continue to meet it for whatever they're proposing. So that one was kind of a compromise to allow what is probably our biggest residential customer to address market conditions. And I can tell you from meeting with them, I met with them this week, this is exactly what is going on with COVID. They are having a shift in market because of the COVID response. What they are selling has what is selling at their place has changed dramatically, the mix. Okay, so again, some definitional changes based on comments from a consultant. We took their comment and addressed it. Next slide, please, Janet. More definitional stuff. CARP-C had some issues. We put a kind of a wiggle room slide in there about how we're going to address solar panels when we get a solar farm in, because they are widely variant in terms of how the solar farms come in and what they propose. Comments by Friends of Lake Wingra said we should require, this is kind of substantive, but we can't address it here, that when you resurface a parking lot, that we should require, let's say you resurface an acre of parking lot, that we should require you to get a permit and meet all these standards. Zoning does not require that, okay? So if all you're doing is resurfacing a parking lot, that is permit free from zoning, okay? And engineering does not have a permit process of our own. We piggyback onto the zoning process. So while there's some merit, certainly some merit to their request, I can't address it with Chapter 37. That would have to be addressed with changes to Chapter 28. Next slide, please. Again, a comment on which intensity, duration, frequency. They recommended using Professor Wright's, as Janet described. For now, we are not proposing to do that. Next slide, please. Friends of Lake Wingra also recommended that we go to, instead of the first half-inch treatment with green infrastructure on redevelopment, that we go to the first inch. Again, there's some merit in this proposal, but I can also say that there is a lot of trepidation in the development community about even meeting the first half-inch. So we thought that meeting the first half-inch would be the place to start and see how this works out for a bit before we jump to a bigger requirement. And Friends also requested that our annual reports on private sites be available on the web. That is not an ordinance issue. They are available currently, but not on the web. We will figure out a way to do that. Next slide, please. Friends also requested more water quality goals. Not to belabor this point, but basically we can't do that right now. There's a state statute that limits our ability to require water quality much beyond what we currently have. The Friends recommended a review of how zoning codes in Chapter 37 interplay. Actually, we are taking that on right now. We have an RFP that we just received and chose a consultant on who will be doing exactly that. Next slide, please. And we're done. So, questions for Janet or I?
Oh, 2 participants have raised their hands. Oh, glasses. Okay. Michael.
Yeah.
Oops, I went to the wrong.
Pardon me?
Okay, go ahead. I was hitting buttons all over the place.
In section 37.057A2, it has to do with the limit for discharge flow rate on when the relevant provisions would kick in. And a comment was made on the summary sheet that is being lowered to 100 gallons per minute.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So that is actually a requirement when you connect a sump pump to our storm sewer system. We require a certain threshold. There are certain thresholds in there in terms of your gallons per minute discharge for a sump pump. This is becoming more and more common as underground parking becomes more and more prevalent. Most of these underground parkings are in groundwater oftentimes, and so they have a sump pump that runs 365 24/7, and so to get a little bit better handle on how we track where that water is coming from into our system, we just changed the threshold to a slightly lower number than it used to be. I think it was 200. I don't have that code right in front of me, but I believe it used to be 250 gallons per minute.
You don't have that memorized? I guess, so that doesn't have anything to do with construction itself then?
No, that is a permanent connection to our system for discharge of non-storm water.
All right. And then as far as erosion control measures, they would kick in. Would they more closely coincide with the DNR requirement? I think there's a 75 gallons a minute.
That is already correct. We cannot, that is already in the ordinance. It doesn't state that exactly, but that up to 75 gallons per minute is covered under an NR 151 permit. That is correct.
Okay. And then in section 37.05 7B5, talking about private discharges into an enclosed depression going up to 100-year storm event?
Yes. Yep.
You got
so this happens. I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
You got some confusing language in there. It's hard to read.
We can certainly look at that and try and clarify it. That is meant to address, we have this downtown oftentimes where a block is internally drained, and as it is being redeveloped, it can't get to the public right of way. And so what we have required in the past is that they match volumes to a certain standard. And so we were upping that standard with this change. So the code has been in there for a while. We were changing the standard that they had to meet to do that.
Yeah, and that's fine. I think it's just a matter of grammar.
Okay. I'll be happy to look at that.
And then just one more thing on 37.092L. You've got a requirement for 100-year requirement for buildings. And then there's a 37093C2 that bumps that up to 500 years. And it just seems that maybe we should add some language in the first section that requires compliance with 37093C2 as applicable.
Okay.
And you just might want to check that, see if that makes sense or not.
Yep, I've written down all the sections you're referring to, and I will look at that.
Okay, and then that's all that I've got.
Good. Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome, Jackie.
All right, now participants. Michael. Okay, other discussion? I'm gonna open the public. Nope, Teeth. Alder Furman.
Yeah, I was going to make a motion, but you're welcome to open up public comment. That's fine.
Okay, so I'm going to open the public hearing, and we have two registrants. Carol Terrell, supporting, wishes to speak. Carol, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Carol Terrell. I'm a member of the Climate Crisis Program Committee of the League of Women Voters of Dane County. The League's statement of support for the revised stormwater ordinance sent to City Engineering on April 10th is posted at Legistar 60351. You will notice that League encourages other municipalities throughout Dane County to adopt similar stormwater ordinance revisions on their own. This will ensure a level playing field for builders and developers countywide. The League supports that new and redeveloped buildings are required to collect rainfall using an intensive green roof and pervious pavement. The ordinance has long encouraged use of additional green infrastructure practices. We think it is important that all required green infrastructure is subject to recording of a maintenance agreement. Forward-thinking developers know they must build for the future, not continue traditional construction strategies that worked before climate change entered the picture. Moderate cost increases to new construction and renovation of older buildings are a drop in the proverbial flood bucket compared to the costs home and business owners will incur at their expense, not the builders, if a cycle to build, destroy, build anew is allowed to persist. The August 2018 flood cost individuals collectively between $17.5 million and $30 million. Total damage to public infrastructure was $3.94 million, according to city engineering. Common sense tells us we need to avoid repeat scenarios. Public and private infrastructure that cannot withstand the fallout from extreme weather events we have recently experienced and that up-to-date scientific data tell us we can expect in the coming years have no place in the city of Madison. The city's revised stormwater ordinance provides leadership. The ordinance incorporates green infrastructure and a path for proactive decision-making using hard data from recently conducted watershed studies. The ordinance ensures that our public works projects deal with flooding at the watershed level. These are steps we must take to build a more resilient and equitable community for all. We urge your support of the revised stormwater ordinance. Thank you for letting me speak and stay safe and healthy.
Thank you. And then we have Paul Dearlove, supports, does not wish to speak. And we had a couple letters that were copied out to everybody on the board. With that, I'll close the public hearing. Here we go, Alder Furman.
All right, move adoption.
Thank you. Joe Clausius. Thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you. And okay. Is there further discussion? Oh, okay. That was you wanted to speak, Alder Furman? That was go ahead. Don't ask an either or question.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay.
I wanted to thank engineering for all their hard work on this. I went to every public hearing about this, including the virtual ones, and the amount of effort and work that went into the public input on this, as well as obviously just even putting it together. Well, obviously putting it together was a lot of work, but then also the public outreach was incredible. I think you could see that from the slides that we saw today, even the level of detail that was put into answering a lot of the concerns that people had. My district, the district I represent, got hit pretty hard from flooding in August of 2018 from the flash floods. That was not the first time, certainly won't be the last. We desperately need to be putting new ordinances in place like this. I think based on some of the feedback we've gotten, people somehow believe that this is all we're going to do. Obviously, this board knows that we've done and will continue to do a lot of public infrastructure updates, but we can't do it alone. We need as properties get developed and redeveloped, we need these ordinances in place also to help with what we're seeing, increasing rain events, et cetera. So thank you so much to the engineering team for putting this together, and I'm really excited to support this today.
Very good, thank you. All in favor, unless I see objections? Seeing none, motion passes. Thank you, everybody. Let's see. Page 5. We did item 19. Item 21, Amy Scanlon, Gates of Heaven.
Hi, I'm Amy Scanlon with engineering. The Gates of Heaven exterior restoration project will restore the masonry, the windows, and doors. The more specific scope includes cleaning and consolidation of the Madison sandstone, limited repairs to the stone, cleaning of brick, repointing of the stone and the brick, rehabilitation of the wood sash, doors, and related trim, and then the installation of exterior storms on all windows. That's pretty much the project. It's pretty extensive, but simply just the exterior. Sorry, Jackie, I can't hear you.
Unmute me. Michael Cullen, you should be able to go now.
Yes. Are there limitations to the type of materials that can be used for the windows and the doors?
Yes, in that the existing windows and doors will remain, they're just being restored.
And it would seem, as far as the windows go anyway, that the cost of restoring or rehabbing the sashes and adding storm windows are going to be pretty expensive.
This is a designated landmark and listed on the National Register of Historic Places. So we need Landmarks Commission review of this project, as well as State Historic Preservation Office review. Both have given approval of the exterior restoration of the windows and doors. So replacement is really not an option.
Replacement isn't an option because that's not what they approved, but if they were requested, they may approve it, or?
I doubt it. The idea is to retain historic fabric, not replace it. And these windows are easily repairable.
Okay.
Thank you. Joe Clausius.
Approval.
Joe?
Yes.
Did you want to say something?
No, I said if there are no other questions, I'll move for approval.
Oh, thank you. That'd be great. Alder Furman?
I'll go ahead and second that.
Thank you very much. Is there further discussion? Oh, shoot, wrong thing. Okay. All in favor? Unless I see objection. Michael, were you? Michael, were you?
I just had a comment. I think I like the pink flamingos better than the polar bears for Keith's background there.
I was worried what happened to the flamingos if the polar bears ate them, but wrong parts of the area. Anyway, seeing no objection to the motion, it's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. I think that takes us to item 26, interim pilot program for funding rain gardens. This is the Greg and Janet show again.
Thank you. I was trying to find the hand to unmute myself. So
yeah, I don't.
Okay, so this is not the slide I want. So can I share my screen perhaps?
Go ahead.
Yeah, you should have a share screen button at the bottom of your screen.
All right, let me do that. And I always find this a little disconcerting because I lose what I'm seeing, but do you guys see an interim pilot program for funding rain gardens? Is that what you see?
Yes, we do.
All right, awesome.
I'll just speak for everyone. Yes, we do.
So what I just want to talk about here briefly is you all might remember probably about 2 months ago now, we had a joint MOU agreement with the USGS come through the board to study green infrastructure and the application of a green infrastructure on a watershed basis, right? Not just at a parking lot, not just at a Walmart site, but what happens when you do it on an entire watershed. That is proceeding. It's a 5-year study, 5 to 6 years actually. It's over on the, I do have a map, but you might remember it's over by the Glenway Golf Course is the watershed we're doing this in on the near west side. We have 2 street reconstructs that are going to get pervious pavement this year. We talked, I think, a bit about that. And so we're going to do a fair amount of public works infrastructure, green infrastructure in this watershed, but that's not going to be enough, right? What I need to do is document what I would say is critical mass of green infrastructure in a watershed. So with our reconstructs this year, we're getting 14 rain gardens from residents who want them. But what we are trying to find a way to do is we're trying to find a way to get people to put green infrastructure on private property, right? Not just in the right of way. And this watershed offers us some opportunities because we have some partners. The Friends of Lake Wingra here, we have the Wingra watershed plan that was approved probably 10 years ago now that calls for a number of rain gardens and increasing infiltration in that watershed. And so what we've come up with here is, I want to be clear, this is a pilot funding study only for this watershed. And it will only run for the duration of this study that's going on with the USGS to try and get people to implement green infrastructure in their on private property. And so basically what we are going to do is we have the Friends of Lake Wingra who are willing to help us and go reach out to their neighbors. And we have several staff, Phil Gabler and Maddie Dumas and other people and Carissa Wagner, who have worked in this neighborhood as well, who can meet with people and help try and, I hesitate to use this word, but sell them on green infrastructure on private property. And what I'm scrolling down here to is the crux of this is what do you have to do to get reimbursed? So you have to have a plan. You have to meet a certain set of criteria in terms of what it is. I'm not going to pay you $1,000 or up to $1,000 to put in one rain barrel, right? You gotta meet some minimum thresholds here, and you have to have your plan approved by us before it's implemented. And this is a reimbursement plan, so much like our sanitary lateral relocation policy, you got to do the work up front, and then you have to submit paid receipts back to us, okay? And then we would do our reimbursement, which is exactly how our lateral relocation from backyards to front yards works. And in the end here, the part that I guess matters probably to you guys is, assuming you do all that, what do you get paid? How much am I going to get to do this? And I scrolled to the very end of this, and what it amounts to is we tried to incentivize, the best way to say this is, or more incentivize doing some of the work yourself. So if all you do is hire a contractor, you get a maximum of 80% up to reimbursement up to $1,000 maximum. If you do it yourself completely, you do all the excavation, you do all the planting, you do all the shaping, and we will help you with that. We have people who can, meet you on site and give you guidance and stuff like that. And Phil has done a number of these, what I would call, how we're going to do this in the world of COVID, I'm a little less sure, but he has done these before where we have neighborhood rain garden parties where people actually help build one in one person's backyard, and then you kind of go, I think it would be equivalent to back in the old days, a barn raising party, right? Where all the neighbors come and you kind of build this. We've done a couple of these last year. So if you do it all yourself, you can still get a maximum of $1,000, but you get it up to 110%. So let's say your plants, the excavation, the rental equipment to do a rototiller or something was $900. You could get the whole $1,000 because you put your back into this essentially. And then there's a middle ground. We offer this to people because oftentimes the hard part of building a rain garden in your site is getting rid of the excess dirt. If you're going to excavate a hole, you got to place that dirt somewhere. So what we have offered to people in the past is we'll give you what looks like a big Mylar bag. And if you fill that up and you leave it in the terrace, our crews will come in and pick up that bag and repurpose that topsoil in some of our projects. We'll take it out to Emil or Sycamore and store it until we have need for it. And in that case, you still get the maximum of $1,000, but you get 90% reimbursement. So the more, what it really gets to here is the more stake you put in the game, the better your percentage reimbursement gets to be, because you'll have no trouble getting that $1,000 with a contractor. They're going to charge you $2,000 to $3,000 to do this. But we have plenty of people, including several in our own office, who have built their own grain garden for $400 and done it all themselves, and they're very effective. So that's the kind of template. I'm trying to be brief here for you. Hopefully you had a chance to read through this. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Okay, I'm not seeing any. Oh, here we go. Okay. Michael?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, how are you going to measure if you've been successful or not with implementation of these private rain gardens?
So that's a great question, right? If you breeze through this, there are some criteria on how big these have to be to meet the reimbursement criteria. So generally, I would consider this successful if we just sold a number of these rain gardens, right? You know, if I got 10 of these sold in a year, I would consider that a win. But if you're asking how we're going to consider success in terms of were they effective, that's the whole point of the USGS study, right? Is we're hoping to get enough green infrastructure in this. The watershed is about 150 acres, okay? That we can measure a significant difference at the end of the pipe. And this is a paired watershed study. So we have another watershed literally right next door that is not getting all this green infrastructure. And we will, so the way the USGS does these studies is they compare the two watersheds and they graph how they act on usually a logarithmic table. And they, over time, they can see how one watershed reacts differently than another. And as they plot those two lines, and I realize this is kind of lost on Zoom, but as you plot those two lines, you will see a divergent point, right? And they can analyze that using statistical methods and show that there's a significant R squared in terms of that difference. And that is what we are hoping to find, and that is the goal at the end of this 6-year study, is to find out how much I have to implement to have that significant effect statistically, that I can actually say there is a difference.
So you're not really going to be able to tell if the private rain gardens had a significant impact compared to the rest of the stuff that you're doing.
That is correct. So there have been a number of studies, including ours. We participated with the USGS back in the I want to say like 2006 through 2010 or 11 on a rain garden study on 2 Madison-owned sites, and the effectiveness of rain gardens on their own has been very well documented. There's a great USGS paper on it, and that study is actually what kind of turned a switch for me. There's a water utility site on the west side. All we're doing is infiltrating their roof water, but we did what's called the double ring infiltrometer before we built the rain garden. And essentially the compacted earth from the construction was no different than concrete. It had less than 1/10 of an inch per hour of infiltration. Okay, so that's essentially nothing, right? And after we had built the rain gardens and planted them with natives, at the end of the study, which was about 5 years, the native side of the rain garden was up to about 2.5 inches per hour, which, you look at that change and you're like, amazing. And I went out during the winter to see melt events on frozen ground. And because of the capillary effects of the roots in the natives, the rain garden was dry even in the winter, even in a winter melt event. It was really impressive for the native side. And so the answer to your question is we know rain gardens work. That isn't in question. What's really in question is how many of them, what density do I need to affect a watershed, right? My analogy here is always like recycling. One person recycles, it means nothing. 50% of people recycle. Okay, this means a lot. Now, you look at Madison and you're like, I think we have something in the 90s for participation in our recycling program. That's a real difference, right? The watershed is very analogous. Can't say that word. Very similar to that. So anyway, that's probably more than you wanted to know.
All right, thank you.
All right. Lower hand. Anyone else wish to have a comment or discussion? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve? Alder Furman.
Move adoption.
Thank you. Oh dear, what did I do? Who was the second? Oh, David. Okay, thank you. And further discussion? All in favor? Seeing no objections, motion passes. Thank you. Item 30, Transportation Improvement Plan. Chris?
Yes, thank you. So I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, are you guys seeing a map of the city here?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, Michael. Oh, where's Michael? Did you have a question now? Okay.
No, I didn't.
Okay, sorry. Okay, here we go.
All right. So
City Madison map.
Included in your packets was a number of different PDFs. This is what I'm going to do today is talk about the Transportation Improvement Program for the city. What the Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP, is basically our kind of a listing of our proposed projects for roadways, bike paths, bridges, etc. over the next 5 or 6 years. Ultimately, what happens is as I develop this tip and go around to committees for comments and share with other agencies in the city, it helps us form our budget request that's due to the mayor in a couple weeks. So what you have in your packet is we have a map of the city with the various projects. We have a major street table. So we have two sections of the budget that we're talking about here for engineering is major streets and ped bike. So I have a table of all the major street projects and programs, and then another table of the ped bike projects and programs. So I won't go into those in great detail, but what I'll do is kind of give you a quick summary of some of the bigger projects and more major programs for us. Is the PowerPoint showing for everybody?
Yes.
Okay, great. So how does the project get into the city's budget? There's a number of different reasons. Safety is a common one. Deteriorated pavement condition is very common. Obviously, if a street's in bad shape, we need to do something to rehab that. Utility infrastructure as well is very common. We're coordinating closely with water utilities, sanitary sewer, and storm sewer to program our projects. Other items could be ped bike improvements, bridge deterioration, coordination with other municipalities or developers, and also some extension or realignments in accordance with neighborhood plans, and lastly, roadway congestion. So I'm just going to kind of go around the city in a counterclockwise motion, starting at the downtown and just kind of go over some of the highlights for you. So starting in the downtown area, we've got a number of things programmed. In the Judge Doyle Square area, we've got Doherty Street, Wilson Street, scheduled out in 2023-24 for when the plan for when the Judge Doyle Square development is fully complete. We have a joint project with the state on Blair Street and John Nolan Blair intersection. Working on that, have some federal safety funds to help with that project, and the state is actually paying for the reconstruction of Blair Street along with that project. So that's a nice project. We're scheduled for 2022. On West Washington, we're looking at resurfacing with utilities on the 400 and 500 blocks, and look to implement some of the markings that is included in the BRT study. There's actually a southbound bus lane included on proposed for West Washington Avenue. And a new project this year, 2024 West Main improvements. This was a TAP program application that we put in that was awarded just recently. We would be working towards making West Main Street a bike boulevard. And one of the first improvements there would be a new RRFB and safe crossing of Proudfit at Main. John Nolan Drive. This is a reconstruct project from North Shore Drive to Olin Avenue. Included in this project will be the replacement of the 6 bridges, 3 northbound and 3 southbound bridges in the causeway. We'll also be looking at replacing the shoreline along this area and expanding ped bike accommodations here. This is, I think, the most popular, if not the, maybe one of the top 2 or 3 popular bike paths in the state. So what we're going to be looking to do there is expand it to allow for separate ped bike, or separate sidewalk facility and bike facility, so that there's both pedestrians and bikes have their own path. So that is going to be one of our requests for the next round of federal funding for the from the MPO. And we're currently looking at 25-26 for that project. University Avenue is this is a federally funded reconstruct that's already been approved by the MPO. We're scheduled for 2022. Would be a reconstruct from Shorewood Boulevard to University Bay Drive. It's a 6-lane reconstruct. We're including sidewalk on the north side of the street there where there's missing links, as well as looking to include a new ped bike bridge for the campus drive path and Black Hawk path over University Bay Drive. Further out west, we have a joint project with the City of Middleton. This is also MPO federally funded. Would be reconstruct from Highway 14 down to Timberwolf Trail, which is just north of Old Sauk Road. Would be reconstructing it to a new urban boulevard with a multi-use path along the stretch as well. West Town Path is another path project that we've been working on over the years and looking to implement the next few phases. Some of you are probably familiar. Right now we're constructing currently from Grand Canyon Drive to Gammon Road and including a new tunnel underneath Gammon Road. That's under construction right now and was part of the TAP program previously. This Westtown path currently exists from Whitney Way up to Grand Canyon and Struck, and as I mentioned, we're extending it to Gammon. In the future, we're looking to extend that path along the north side of the Beltline over to High Point Road, where we have a connection already built to cross High Point Road and a connection already built to Commerce Drive. And also in 2023, this is another new one in the TIP. We've been looking at this over the past few years, but recently applied for TAP funding for this and were awarded. So this is now programmed. This stretch from Commerce to Junction is scheduled for 2023. That would be a new multi-use path along the north side of the street, protected facility. Okay, heading over to Park Street area. We've got a number of projects scheduled here. So those of you probably remember in 2020, we did joint repairs on Park Street on all the northbound lanes in these purple areas. So that's West Wash to Olin, and then from the railroad to Badger. In 2022, we're gonna pick that up and continue and work on the southbound lanes. There's a gap that we have right now that we purposely scheduled to avoid conflicts with Fitchburg's Fish Hatchery Road reconstruction. We didn't want to be working on both corridors at the same time. So we're proposing our southbound lanes in 2022. Between Olin and the railroad, the pavement is in much worse shape, and we are working with the state to try to schedule a reconstruction in that area. So that's this orange stretch here. Also, in this area, we have a new Cedar Street extension through the Truman Olson property, as well as some South Street resurfacing and stormwater improvements. That's scheduled for 2021. And then another new project, not a new project, but a new timing in the TIP. We're looking at this Cannonball Path extension. Recently, we were looking at that in the past and having some trouble obtaining the land. There's been some new developments with some of the landowners that we feel a little bit more comfortable that we could possibly obtain the land needed and complete that path. And also timely is possible TID amendment to help fund that path in 2022. So right now the Cannonball Path currently extends along the railroad and stops at Fish Hatchery. We would be extending that along the railroad section and then behind the Bowman School and playfields, and with a new bridge over Winger Creek connecting to the Winger Path. So that's a new project in the TIP we're really excited about. Okay, another new one. Now we're on the very far southeast side of the city. Here's the Beltline interchange with I-39. There's the Ho-Chunk area. We got Mill Pond Road and County AB. Those are some of our most dangerous intersections in the city. And we've been working with WSDOT, Dane County, and the Ho-Chunk Nation to try to work together on a project which would reconstruct the two at-grade intersections with Highway 12 and construct a new interchange on County AB and two frontage roads along the north and south of Highway 12 and 18. So that would replace those two at-grade intersections with one interchange and frontage road system. That is currently we're showing in 2022, and large project, as I mentioned, jointly with WSDOT and others. Okay, moving over towards the east side now. We have Garver Path planned. The Garver Path is a new path extension that was awarded TAP funds, federal TAP funds. We're going to be creating a new path from the Sugar Avenue and Cap City Trail along the Garver property, and with a new bridge over Starkweather Creek, and then up towards Milwaukee Street with another bridge at over Starkweather Creek with Ivy Street. That is scheduled for next year, 2021. Autumn Ridge Path is another path and bridge system that we're starting to work on the design for, and hoping to fit into our MPO SB Urban requests next round. Looking to try to see if we can get that funded in 2026. So what this is a new path system from Milwaukee Street up to through the High Stand Park for the southern stretch here. Utilize some on-street, very residential streets for a stretch, and then picking back up on a path and a new bridge over Highway 30 to a plot of land that we own on Ziegler Road. And what we're doing with this Garver Path and this Autumn Ridge Path is really try to connect the Cap City Trail to some of these more eastern, northeastern neighborhoods, and work our way, continue our way up north and east, and try to connect those neighborhoods into a nice protected pathway or residential street system to get them onto the Cap City Trail. Atwood Avenue is a project we've been working on. Actually, the design is complete. We'd be proposed to reconstruct from Fair Oaks to Cottage Grove Road. Currently showing that in 2025. We are, as I mentioned, the design is done, but we are waiting for federal funds, and this would be also one of our MPO requests in the next cycle next year, and currently proposing 2025. As I should mention, if there's any kind of stimulus funds or recovery funds available, this would be a good candidate because it is a shelf-ready project. It's a nice reconstruct that really greatly improves ped bike facilities along the whole stretch, and we're excited about trying to get that done. Troy Drive underpass is a ped bike underpass of the railroad at Troy Drive. Right now, currently, there's a old stormwater culvert that's utilized for sidewalk for folks to use the sidewalk on the north side of Troy Drive. We would be proposing to replace that with a new, well-lit, well-drained standard underpass with good visibility. That's the concept of the project there. I should mention the design of this is currently on hold. We were approached by the railroad to perhaps enter for a grant to have the whole railroad bridge reconstructed, and we partnered with the railroad to put that application into WSDOT, and currently waiting the results of that grant. So if that's the case, then we'd utilize those funds that were for the underpass for the local share of the bridge reconstruction, which would accomplish the same, it would accomplish actually more of our goals. It would provide for sidewalk on both sides of the street, a big wide opening that's much more visible, and also provide better clearance for structures underneath the railroad bridge. Okay, so that's kind of some of a lot of the major streets. We also have some very important parts of our budget that are in those tables. Our programs. We have a reconstruct program and a pavement management program. So reconstruct streets are streets that generally are local, and by the sense of it, it's a residential street. A lot of times, single family homes. In this year, we are proposing to reconstruct 4.8 miles. And the list of streets are here. I won't go into all of them in detail, but please let us know if you have any questions or concerns or streets that you want us to consider for this program. So we have we're looking at 21 through 26. This is just showing the 2021 right now. Pavement management is another program. It's very important for us. In the GO funds for both of these accounts are fairly similar, about 10 to 11 million a year. And as you can see, I'll back up a second, with the reconstruct programs, we can get about 4.8 miles of streets reconstructed. So that's pulling out all the base, all the curb and gutter, and all the pavement and reconstructing. With pavement management, with that same amount of funds, we can chip seal 50 to 70 miles. We can crack seal 50 to 100 miles. We do a lot of patching throughout the year on arterials, and we can resurface 6.5 miles. So super important program where we can utilize some of these more lower cost alternatives to try to extend the life of our pavement before they're needed to have a reconstruct. And as you can see, you can't get as far, obviously, with your money doing reconstruct. So that's why this program is so important for us. I have the 2021 projects here listed, and also on the map you'll see some of the ones further out. And let us know again if you have some streets that want us to consider. Bikeways program is also another important program for us. This is generally does a lot of the resurfacing of smaller path projects. So we try to, we rate our bike paths similar to our streets and try to resurface those when it's needed. In 2021, we're looking at some more southwest path resurfacing, and a couple extensions of Demetral path, and as well as some wayfinding and bike lane marking, and have a few candidate future projects in the out years. Sidewalk program, also a very important program. So this is where we go around the city once every 10 years, and every 10 years we go around the entire city. So basically that's about 2 aldermanic districts a year. And this year we're working in Alder Revere and Presta Giacomo's. Next year we have Alder Evers, congratulations, and Alder Carter. So those are areas where we go around and walk the sidewalks, determine any imperfections, cracked sidewalks, sidewalk that doesn't drain properly, and replace those. It's important for our liability to show that we're maintaining our sidewalk across the city. Also in the sidewalk program, we take a look at extending missing links, gaps that are identified by the MPO, and also requests from alders and other requests from the general public. And these are the projects that we kind of have on our horizon. We are looking at quite a number of projects. Usually each year, a number of these drop off due to with the public process, or some difficulties in the design. But this is kind of what we're looking for next year. A number of these are ones that were supposed to be looked at this year, but with staffing issues and COVID response, we were unable to get to. So that's kind of the list we're looking at there for 2021 for sidewalk program. Okay, real quick, lastly, I'll just kind of give a summary of where we are on our streets. I think I mentioned we rate the streets every 2 years on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being a brand new street, and 1 being the worst. We have a goal that we try to keep up with on type of streets. So on local streets, these are the residential streets, low volume. We have a goal of trying to keep less than 30% of total miles at or below rating 5. And right now we've been meeting that goal pretty well over the years, currently at 25%. So collector streets, we look at, those are kind of your in-between streets. They're not the residential streets, they're not the university avenues, but they're kind of the in-between collectors. Our goal is to have less than 20% of total miles at or below 5. And right now we're a little bit above our goal at 25%. Arterial streets, we have an even more aggressive goal due to the fact that there's so many people using them. We want to usually try for less than 15% of total miles at or below 5, and currently we're at 25.6. So what we've been trying to do over the years with these collectors and arterials is to utilize that pavement management program a little more intensely, and the patching program to try to get those numbers down. As you can see, we've been kind of holding steady the last 3 years, and hopefully we'll be able to keep making some headway. It's at least comforting to know that it hasn't been going up significantly in the last 3-4 years. But we're trying to do the best we can with the set of money that we're able to get from the budget system. And lastly, the state of our path. So we don't have a stated goal, but generally we've been trying to schedule resurfacing in that bikeways program of any paths that are at condition 5 or less. And right now we're at 10%. The majority of that 10% is coming from that southwest path, and hopeful that with our scheduling of that next year, that will drop down considerably. How to get more info? So all of our projects and our map are on our website, and obviously I can be contacted, or Christy at any or Rob anytime. If there's ideas for projects, areas we want to look at for ped bike, for sidewalk, for street conditions, you name it, we're looking for that input. So that's all I had. If folks have questions.
Michael, unmute. Okay. Michael?
Yeah, I just wanted to say it was a very good presentation there, Chris, and I appreciate it. You're to be commended.
Thanks.
All right. Further discussion? Is there a motion to approve?
There's actually nothing to approve. It's information.
Nothing to approve.
Yeah.
Okay. That's item 30. Great. Thank you, Chris. We'll go on to item 31, awarding of a contract.
All right. It's Christy here for item number 31. Do you guys have to put it on the table first before I do the recommendation? Jackie?
What? No. Oh, it's up. Item 31.
All right. So
there it is. Okay. Yeah.
We are recommending awarding Public Works contract number 8907 Orchard Street sanitary sewer repair to the low bidder, Speedway Sand and Gravel, Inc., in the amount of $205,986.82. Is
there a motion to approve? I lost my group again. Okay, David. Unmute. Okay, David. Thank you. And second, Joe. Oh, hang on. Joe. Thank you. That was a second from Joe. And all in favor, unless I see anything, any objections? Seeing none, motion passes. Any discussion on Stable Madison Committee or the Transportation Committee report?
Actually, Jackie, those are just for informational purposes. They're after adjournment, so.
Right. Okay. So, oh yeah, so we are looking for a motion to adjourn.
Don't move.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Thank you. We're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.